Hello and welcome to this special interview on Arabiya English. I'm Tom Burges Watson. Now today we are joined by Xander Evitts, who is one of the world's leading osteopaths and performance coaches. He's trusted by top athletes, actors and business leaders. And for over a decade, he's been the expert that high performers rely on for recovery, pain management and truly effective health strategies, cutting through wellness hype and methods that actually work. Well, with the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix this weekend, plus stress, travel and desk life taking a toll on all of us, there's no better time to learn what the world's top performers are getting right and perhaps what they're getting wrong as well. Xander, thank you very much indeed for coming to see us. I understand you are a performance osteopath. And the first question I was asking myself was, what's the difference between a performance osteopath and the more traditional sense of osteopath?
Sure, very good question. Firstly, thank you for having me. Great to be here. I think the difference is basically that clinically an osteopath would see anybody with pain, much like a physiotherapist, but perhaps they use their hands a little bit more. And with a performance osteopath, we have a little bit more of a skill set that lends itself to a broader range of modalities, for example, strength and conditioning, for example, recovery tactics and things that you might integrate to somebody's lifestyle. And I think that lends itself to the kind of demographic that I serve, which is, high performers, people that have to be switched on, maybe more than the usual 9-to-5er. But there's definitely crossovers, and I definitely still have the same skill set. So clinically, we start off with that, and then a performance osteopath would be somebody that obviously branches out into other areas of expertise.
Okay, so you mentioned high-performance individuals. I mean, give us a couple of clues. I know you can't give us names, but the sorts of profile of client you have.
Yeah, sure. So a lot of the people that I see are kind of the top 1 or 0.1%, if you like, can range from CEOs of huge corporations that travel, constantly on the road with huge demands on their plate. And then I could be seeing actors that have roles that are very physically demanding and they just need support with maybe some injuries or pain or just their fitness for that role. As well as those, I could also, be seeing athletes, and that could be from Formula One to football to basketball. I think my therapeutic skill set lends itself to a foot in the door with a lot of these people. So usually people come to me first with a bad shoulder, a bad back, and then the relationship evolves and I help them kind of rebuild out of that injury into a fitness or a level of fit for purpose, as I would call it, to be able to do their job and their role at a very, very high level.
Okay, and since you mentioned Formula One and we've got the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix upon us, I want to ask you, what's your understanding? Because I know you work with quite a lot of drivers and racing drivers involved in Formula One. Is it more about mind over matter? How strong is the mind aspect of being a good Formula One driver versus the physical aspect?
It's definitely huge. I think when you get to the top echelons of any sport, I think when you look at the field of play or on the grid, what you'll see is a lot of athletes that are very similarly posed. So their level of skill in each area required for that sport is almost very, very similar, almost the same. And those marginal gains will be in the management which I offer to people of the psychological side, the emotional side. I'm supporting people and helping also bring in other professionals that might help, with the psychology. When you talk about mind over matter, I think it's important to realize these people are really, they're under a lot of stress, a lot of pressure. And that has a lot of similarities with these CEOs, with the actors. But you're right in saying it plays a huge role because if for some reason on that day you have some kind of emotional wobble, or there's something at home that isn't quite right that day, when you get on the grid, you're slightly behind the next person. And we know that those margins, when you come to the end of the race, that's what determines win or lose. So.
Right, your focus just isn't completely there, is it? It's going to be, your mind's going to be somewhere else.
Exactly.
And your body is there, and it's going through some pretty arduous tests, 50 kilos forced through the neck on a corner, for example. What does that actually do to a driver's body? And what can people who aren't involved in racing driving, ordinary people like me, perhaps learn from the recovery routine of a driver?
Sure, yeah. I mean, you're right in saying that the forces that are exerted upon those drivers are absolutely huge. I think it's important to understand that physically they go through a lot more than you might realize just sat still. And even slight drops in hydration can cause a drop in mental acuity in a significant way. So what the guys are doing in my role in Formula One, for example, they're monitoring and helping to optimize these different facets of health and fitness so that there isn't a drop in any of the any of those outlets of performance. So, like I said, with the hydration and mental acuity, it just takes one moment of lapsed concentration, and it could be a crash, or it could be a few seconds back, and therefore losing a position in the race.
It's really interesting because you're painting the picture of a sort of hybrid between someone who works with the human body in your capacity as an osteopath and someone who works with the mind, almost like a therapist, a psychiatrist, psychotherapist, something along those lines. And I just want to ask you as well, I mean, when we look at these high performers that you're working with, you could almost call them the 0.1% of the population. Are there sort of habits that we, and I talk about people who aren't in that percentage, could learn from them in terms of recovery, in terms of routine? What lessons can we draw from them?
Definitely quite a few lessons, actually. And I'm always, I'm forward speaking and saying that, even though they are the 0.01%, you have to remember that their lifestyle is very different to ours. And in some regards, you might look at them and say, oh, well, I need to have strength, I need to have conditioning, I need to have cardiovascular health. Yes, but your demands in a day are very different to theirs. We try and support from lots of different angles, for example, nutrition, for example, the fitness side, the mental side that we're talking about. And I think that what we learn from the elite level athletes is, they're not going to put in protocols that are a waste of time. So we can start to hone in and go, okay, well, this seems important, and so does this. And recovery is huge, as you know. It's definitely a trend right now. And I think the application of those protocols for recovery, for example, they have to be carefully managed, because just saying, oh, an ice bath is good for recovery is far too broad to be a positive for most people. And if I give you the example that, a Formula One driver is probably very well rested in their off season, but during the season, not so much because of the time zone shifts. I'm not going to be putting stressful ice baths into a routine before a race, because that's just going to waste a lot of energy and perhaps be deleterious to their performance. So I think these blanket terms that we're throwing around in this day and age of do this, do that, you have to really look at the person and their circumstances. So yes, we can learn a lot from athletes, but we also have to take context as well.
Okay, so if it's right for him, it might not be right for you or me.
Exactly.
You've got to look after yourself as well, haven't you? Because you've just been telling me a bit before we started this interview about your punishing travel routine, lots of different time zones in there. And I'm just wondering how you manage to stay on top of your game and recover, for example, from pretty stressful, pretty exhausting journeys that you're having to do.
Sure, yeah. I mean, fortunately, I'm not the top of the chain in terms of pressure and job commitments. I'm just part of the big wheel that's going with these organisations and people that I work with. So I have the luxury of time, but I often don't have the luxury of schedule. And so I guess what I do for myself is, before a trip like the one I'm on at the moment, which is 6 or 7 cities in about 8 days, I try to improve my fitness up until the trip. And then during the trip, I'm just in I'll get my recovery in where I can. I'm not trying to improve my fitness. I'm not trying to gain strength. I'm just trying to manage so that when I'm there for the client, then I'm also at my best. I think a lot of the times people think more is more. So, you think, oh, I've only got a short gap between a couple of stressful work days. I'll go in and do some sprints because I've got 10 minutes and that will give me more out of the time that I'm getting. But actually that's just going to put you in a deeper deficit, and you'll likely perform worse the next day, and it's difficult to come out of that. So I think, definitely I look at the schedule that I have, and I try and make it so that I'm in my best kind of, fitness and health, and I'm recovered before a trip. I'm not looking after myself in the trip, I'm looking after my clients.
Okay, but have you got a sort of a hack, sort of a go-to routine or something that you do, especially perhaps to get over jet lag?
Definitely. So I usually try and wake up on a timed alarm clock. So if you go to bed, let's say at midnight, I want you to wake up within a multiple of 90 minutes, because that's your sleep cycle. And if you break that sleep cycle in half, you're in deep REM sleep. And that's going to leave you feeling groggy and not very sharp mentally the next day. So even if it's for the sake of losing 30 minutes of total sleep, I'm going to be far sharper waking up as a multiple of 90 as I come out of that deep sleep. So that's my first thing, is before bed, I'll just set the alarm clock for a good time that is a multiple of 90 minutes. And then when I wake up, hydrate, take some electrolytes. I have some movement practices that personally I find really good. I can do it from my hotel room. Foundation training is
bit of stretching?
Those. A little bit of stretching, and I'd say be intuitive, move around. I often use like a heart rate monitor and try and stick in that zone 2 sweet spot. So I know that I'm not overtraining and overexerting myself, but I'm going to feel nice and fresh, get lots of oxygen into my body, feel invigorated rather than exhausted. And that seems to help me wake up for the day. I think stumbling out of bed and trying to maximize sleep volume over, trying to manage that articulately is I've tried that, it doesn't work.
And you've got to eat healthily as well, haven't you? Because when you're traveling and when you're working funny hours as well, there's a tendency to eat junk because it's nearby, and it's sort of comfort food in a way. And there's all this processed food and ultra-processed food at our disposal. And I'm just wondering, the people you see regularly, your clients, people come to your clinic, do you see a link between poor nutrition and pain/inflation? Is that something can you see the pattern?
Definitely. There's definitely a link between people with, and I would just zoom out a bit and say, if somebody's eating poorly with these highly processed, foods, they're likely not paying much attention to most of their lifestyle. So there's a lot of headroom for improvement with these kind of people, and usually they've come to me because they have pain. So it's a really easy sell to start managing these other areas of their health. But nutrition, for sure, is a low-hanging fruit, as I would call it. It's something that you can, accessibly and affordably for most people, make a quick change, and within a few days, you're going to see a good improvement. And yeah, ultimately, pain is definitely increased or exacerbated by a poor lifestyle and stress.
Have you got any superfoods that you are your go-to snack, for example, something that you would think people might have underestimated in terms of the power of what that food could do for you?
Sure, and I think everybody's different with this, so it's worth the trial and error. But at the moment, I'm carrying some tart cherry juice, specifically the Montmorency type of cherry. Athletes have been using it for a very long time. It's really easy to travel with because you can have different forms, or just take some concentrate juice in your fridge at home. And I think that's at the moment the front of my mind, because it's definitely something that I'm carrying with me on these long and stressful trips.
What are some of the warning signs that people might look out for when it comes to the beginnings of burnout? What would be some of the telltale signs people could look out for?
So it's an interesting question, because I think psychologically we keep going and pushing through, and burnout usually happens because you're not aware of the taxing schedule or the taxing job that you're putting on yourself. And I think that the main signs for me are just a general lack of motivation, because that can sometimes come before physical effects. Because you're obviously trying to carry out the tasks every day. You're not thinking of, how do I feel while I'm doing this? And yeah, poor sleep, your appetite starts to change, and you start to reach for more processed foods that are quicker hits, maybe a slump in mood. But I think, yeah, definitely using these wearables that we have, that are very broadly used now, I think you can get a lot of insights to how your health is going, and it's worth, even just for heart rate, it's worth keeping track of that, just as a barometer for your day-to-day health, and when to know when to push it. I think sometimes people wake up and they think, oh, it's Tuesday, that's the day I need to do my sprints and my leg presses and heavy lifts, and actually their body might be not prepared for that, and there's no point in doing that exercise. So if you find yourself in that position where you're not rested and recovered, you're not going to adapt from that workout. So maybe opt for something a little bit lighter.
I'm being told we're nearly out of time, but I want to ask you about posture quickly, because people sit at their desks all day long, like me, and I can see my posture is getting worse. I mean, it's visible on a profile. Are there any quick fixes for that?
I think the quick fix is a psychological one. If you just change your framing of how you perceive posture. First of all, we know that we've just spoken about stress being not great for pain. So somebody that's more stressed will feel more pain. If you're worrying about your posture and you have a slight ache and your day's long, but you can't stop because you've obviously got a job to do, the last thing you want to do is worry about it. And the thing with posture is it's just a moment in time. It's good that you can create these slouched positions, but I think the main thing is to have a strong posterior chain, so the muscles on the back of your body. And when you have time and you're rested, work on strengthening that, because as the day or the week progresses, you're going to be able to uphold that posture without exceeding what I would say is your tissue capacity. So if I could give an analogy of a marathon, at the beginning of the marathon, you're rested and strong, and you can hold good form while you're running. As the marathon goes on, maybe mile 20, fatigue is seriously set in, and you're struggling to hold good posture. And the worse it gets, the higher your risk potentially of an injury. So if you just applied that on a micro level in your day-to-day life, with a stronger back at the start of the day, you're less likely to default into a position at the end of the day, because you're trained and you're prepared for that day.
Okay, and just lastly, I'm being asked to ask you the number one mistake people make when they go to the gym.
I think the number one mistake is to train too much like an athlete and not enough like somebody that is trying to train for health. And the reason I say that is because we learn a lot from people like bodybuilders. And at its roots, bodybuilding is a sport. You stand on stage, and you're prepared to sacrifice your health to look great on the stage. So it's great that we learn some exercises from them, but let's just cherry pick from that and make it a bit more specific to your life. And we just spoke about your posterior chain. So I might ask you to do some deadlifts a couple times a week so that we can strengthen that and help you not fall into those bad positions at the end of the day. So I think, try to train more like a healthy person rather than an athlete. These athletes have a very different lifestyle that we've kind of dipped into today with our discussion, but their lifestyle has lent itself so that they can perform at an optimum level for that specific task. And your specific task is not sat in a Formula One car, unfortunately.
Well, or fortunately, as the case may be.
Yeah, exactly, yes.
But the other drivers probably.
Yeah, so definitely try to look at your health from a holistic point. Don't try and improve your muscle mass. We do want muscle mass. We do want cardiovascular fitness. We do want all the facets of what we can get from the gym, but we don't want to just stay railroaded in one direction and just add muscle.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. We're out of time. Thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate you coming in to see us. Xander Evitts, one of the world's leading osteopaths and performance coaches. Thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thanks.